When a security guard looked up from his desk on a quiet Tuesday morning in Burbank, California, he saw a man walking toward him in worn gray jeans, a faded hoodie, and beat-up shoes. No assistant, no fancy car outside, no security team. Just a guy holding a paper coffee cup like he had nowhere important to be. So the guard did his job. He checked the list. He checked it again. The name wasn't there. And when the man said he worked on the fourth floor, like that he basically owned the place, the guard didn't blink. He had been warned about people who said exactly that. He straightened up, looked the man dead in the eyes, and said the words that would follow him for the rest of his life. "Hand over your keys. You're done." The man didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't say a single word to defend himself. He just stepped back from the elevator, walked over to the window, sat down, and finished his coffee like it was the most normal thing in the world. That man was Keanu Reeves, one of the most famous actors on the planet, the star of The Matrix, John Wick, a man worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and he had just been kicked out of his own office by a 26-year-old security guard who had no idea who he was talking to. But here is the part that nobody talks about. When Keanu finally made it upstairs and everyone around him was ready to apologize and make it right, he didn't ask for the guard to be fired. He didn't even look angry. He looked across that lobby and said 4 words that stopped everyone in the room cold. And when the two of them finally stood face to face later that afternoon, what Keanu said next didn't just shock the guard, it completely shattered him. Because it turned out that Keanu Reeves already knew exactly who that security guard was. He had known the moment he heard his last name, and he had been carrying a secret connected to that young man's family for over 10 years. A secret that had quietly changed the guard's life without him ever knowing it. What was the secret? What did Keanu say that brought a trained security guard to the edge of tears in the middle of a lobby in broad daylight? And what happened between these two men in the months that followed that neither of them has ever forgotten? Stay with us until the very end of this video, because the full story of what happened that Tuesday morning in March 2019 is one of the most quietly extraordinary things you will ever hear. And the ending, the real ending, is the part that will stay with you long after the video is over. It was a Tuesday morning in March 2019, and the air in Burbank, California smelled like car exhaust and fresh coffee. The building at 3000 West Alameda Avenue sits just outside the Warner Brothers lot. It is the kind of place where important things happen quietly. Deals get made in small rooms. Scripts get approved or thrown in trash cans. People with famous names walk through glass doors like it means nothing. Most of them dressed like they knew exactly how important they were. Designer shoes that cost more than a month's rent. Pressed collared shirts without a single wrinkle. Assistants trailing 2 steps behind, heads down, typing on phones, carrying bags that weren't theirs. The building had a certain energy every morning. A hum. The feeling that everyone inside it was somebody or was about to become somebody, or was desperately trying not to be found out as nobody. The man who showed up at 8:51 that morning wore none of that. He had on worn gray jeans with a small tear near the left knee. A dark hoodie faded at both elbows from real use, not from a store that sold things pre-faded. His hair was longer than it probably should have been, curling slightly behind his ears. His beard had the look of someone who had simply forgotten to shave, or had decided at some point that shaving was a problem for a future version of himself. He carried a single paper coffee cup in one hand. Nothing else. And no assistant walking beside him. No black SUV waiting at the curb with tinted windows. No security of his own. He had walked from the parking garage on Olive Avenue 2 blocks away, like any ordinary person on an ordinary Tuesday. His name was on the lease of the office on the 4th floor. His name was Keanu Reeves. But Marcus Del Rey did not know that. Marcus was 26 years old. He was 3 weeks into his job at the front security desk, and he was exactly the kind of young man who understood that a job was only worth having if you did it properly. He had a clipboard. He had a freshly printed badge clipped to his shirt pocket. He had a list of approved names that his supervisor, Priya Nambiar, had printed at 7:30 that morning and placed on his desk with 2 small yellow sticky notes attached. And the man in the gray hoodie was on neither list. Marcus stepped slightly forward from behind the desk. His voice came out firm but not mean. "Excuse me, can I help you?" The man looked up. He had quiet eyes, dark and steady, with something soft living inside them that wasn't quite sadness but lived close to it. He smiled a little. "Hey, fourth floor, I've got a 9 o'clock." Marcus looked down at his clipboard. He ran his finger down the column slowly, checking every name twice. There was no Keanu anywhere on the page. He looked up. "I'm sorry, sir. You're not on the list. I can't let you up without authorization." The man tilted his head slightly, the way a dog does when it hears a sound it cannot quite place. His expression did not harden. It stayed exactly where it was. "I work here," he said simply. "I kind of own the place. Fourth floor is mine." Marcus straightened up. He had been warned specifically and clearly about people who said exactly that. He took one breath. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step back from the elevator." He paused. "And if you have a key card, I'm going to need you to hand it over." A half-second of silence passed between them. Then came the 5 words that Marcus Del Rey would turn over in his mind for the rest of his life, replaying them at night, in the shower, on quiet drives home, wondering if he could have chosen different ones. "Hand over your keys, you're done." The lobby was very still, and the most famous person in the building, the man whose name was on the lease, whose films had made over $2 billion in theaters worldwide, who had once given away a fortune to the people most people never thought about, looked at Marcus Del Rey without anger, without embarrassment, without a single word of protest. And he stepped back from the elevator. He walked to the small waiting area near the window without being asked. He sat down. He crossed one ankle over his knee, looked out at Alameda Avenue, and took a slow sip of his coffee, like a man who had nowhere else to be and no particular feelings about that. Marcus watched him from behind the desk. He had expected an argument. He had expected the performance. In 3 weeks at this building, he had already seen it twice. The flushed face, the raised chin, the voice that climbed half an octave and said things like, "Do you have any idea who I am, and I will have your job by the end of the day?" He had learned to stand very still when that happened, the way his mother had taught him to stand still in storms. You don't fight weather. You just wait for it to pass. But this man did not perform. He simply sat. He looked out the window at the street. He finished his coffee. He did not take out a phone. He did not sigh loudly or check his watch or cut his eyes at Marcus with meaning. He just waited. And something about that quiet, that complete, unbothered, patient quiet, sat in Marcus's chest in a way he couldn't explain and didn't have time to examine, because the lobby was filling up and the desk phone was ringing and he had a job to do. To understand what Marcus had just done, and what it would eventually mean, you have to understand who the man by the window actually was, now underneath every movie poster and magazine cover and action sequence. Keanu Charles Reeves was born on September 2nd, 1964, in Beirut, Lebanon. His father was Hawaiian and Chinese. His mother, Patricia, was English. His first name came from the Hawaiian language. Keanu. It means cool breeze over the mountains. It was the kind of name that sounded like it had already decided to be peaceful. His parents divorced when he was 3 years old. Patricia packed up her children and moved. Then moved again. Then again. Sydney, New York, Toronto. Each city meant a new school, new faces, a new attempt to figure out where he fit. He had dyslexia, which made reading slow and made certain teachers speak to him with a particular kind of tired impatience that a child remembers long after the teacher has forgotten. He found hockey. He played goal for a Toronto team seriously enough that for a real stretch of time, there were 2 possible futures sitting in front of him. And sports was one of them. Acting took it instead. He moved to Los Angeles at 19 with almost nothing in his pockets. He slept in his car for a period of time that he acknowledged in interviews without drama, the same way he acknowledged most difficult things, plainly without asking for anything in return. He auditioned. He got small parts. He got strange parts. He took whatever came because rent was real and belief was cheaper than food but slightly more necessary. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure arrived in 1989, then Point Break in 1991, then Speed in 1994, which made him the kind of famous where people on the street stopped walking when they saw his face. And then, in the spring of 1999, The Matrix opened in theaters across the world and changed everything again. Not just his career, but the shape of what movies thought they were allowed to be. From the outside, his life looked like a straight line upward. One win after another. One film, then a bigger film, then the biggest film of the year. From the inside, it looked completely different, because 1999 was also the year his daughter was born. Her name was Ava Archer Syme Reeves. She was stillborn. He held her. He said goodbye to someone he never got the chance to say hello to. And 18 months later, in April 2001, his girlfriend Jennifer Syme was killed in a car accident on Cahuenga Boulevard in Los Angeles. She was 28 years old. These are not footnotes. These are the center of the story. These are the things that explained the quiet eyes, like in the patients in the lobby, and the way he sat by the window like a man who had already survived the worst thing and had stopped being afraid of the smaller ones. Marcus Del Rey did not know any of this yet. He was watching the lobby door and answering the phone and doing his job. The man by the window finished his coffee and looked at the street. And the morning kept moving, the way mornings do, completely indifferent to what they are carrying. People came through the lobby doors. Badges were checked. Elevators opened and closed. A delivery man left a stack of boxes near the far wall. Someone spilled coffee near the reception plant and cleaned it up themselves without telling anyone. The building breathed in and out the way buildings do between 9 and 10 on a weekday, full of motion that looks important and sometimes is. The man by the window did not move through any of it. He just sat. There is a photograph that surfaced on the internet sometime around 2010. Nobody famous took it. It was a phone camera snap, slightly blurry at the edges, uploaded to an early corner of the web by someone who happened to be walking past at the right moment. Or the wrong moment, depending on how you look at it. In the photo, Keanu Reeves is sitting alone on a park bench in New York City. He is wearing plain, dark clothes. He has a sandwich in his hand. He is not eating it yet. He is just sitting with it, looking somewhere slightly off to the left, his face carrying the particular expression of a man who is not performing anything for anyone. He looks like a person waiting for a bus. Someone put a caption underneath it. The caption said, "Sad Keanu." Not the internet caught it like a spark catches dry grass. The image went everywhere. People made versions of it, photoshopped onto famous paintings, placed inside movie scenes, printed on t-shirts. Late-night television mentioned it. Morning radio mentioned it. For several months in 2010, Sad Keanu was the kind of thing that existed in every online conversation at once. And Keanu Reeves said almost nothing. He gave one small comment in a magazine interview, something close to, "Sometimes a person just eats a sandwich." Then he moved on, because he understood something that very few people who become famous at a young age ever managed to learn. The world is going to build a story about you whether you help write it or not. You can spend your energy fighting the story, or you can spend your energy being something true, not and let the story catch up if it wants to. He chose true. After Jennifer died in 2001, he was seen sitting beside a crying woman on a sidewalk in West Hollywood. Not a grand gesture, not a publicized moment of charity. Just a man who noticed someone was hurting and sat down next to her. A stranger nearby recognized him and mentioned it quietly years later. There were no cameras. No one had asked him to be there. In 2003, while filming The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions back-to-back, first in Sydney, then in Alameda, California, he made a decision that almost nobody outside of the production knew about for years. The costume designers, the stunt coordinators, the special effects crews, and the people whose names appeared in the last 3 minutes of the credits that most audiences never sat through, he shared a significant portion of his earnings with them. Quietly, without a press release, without a single public statement. The people who received it told each other in private, the way people share things that feel too large and too real for public conversation. He built a motorcycle company in 2011 with his friend Gard Hollinger. They called it Arch Motorcycle, and they built it by hand in a garage in Los Angeles because he wanted to make something real that he could point at and say, I did that with my own hands. Not a performance, not a brand. A thing with weight and function and the smell of engine oil. That he signed on to John Wick in 2014 because the script was sharp and because the character, a man who loses the last tender connection to his dead wife and then walks into the fire of his own grief with both hands, did not require much explanation. He understood that man in his bones. By March 2019, Keanu Reeves had spent 30 years absorbing the fact that the world would not always recognize him correctly. That people would see the hoodie and the worn jeans and the solo walk from the parking garage and draw the wrong conclusions. That being quiet looked to certain people like being nobody. He had made peace with all of it a long time ago. What he had not expected on that Tuesday morning was to walk into a lobby in Burbank and find himself standing across from a last name he recognized immediately. On a last name that stopped something in him very briefly before he sat down and waited. A last name he had not heard spoken aloud since 2009. But he sat with it. He folded it quietly into his chest the way he folded most things, and he waited, and he watched the lobby, and he did not let it show on his face. Because whatever was happening inside him was his, and he had learned a long time ago that not everything that moves you needs an audience. He would deal with it when the time came. Marcus Del Rey grew up in Compton, California, in a house on East Oleander Street that smelled like his grandmother Rosalie's cooking on Sundays. Cornbread and something slow-moving on the back burner. A smell that meant safety in a way nothing else quite matched. The other 6 days of the week, the house smelled like effort. Like a family pushing against something invisible and heavy that never fully pushed back. His father, Theodore Del Rey, had worked as a stunt coordinator in the film industry for 11 years. Not a famous one. Not the kind whose name appeared in entertainment profiles or industry award ceremonies. The kind who arrived at 4 in the morning before the actors were awake. Who rigged a vehicle to roll on an exact mark, measured the distance 3 times, ran the sequence in his head while drinking bad craft services coffee, and then made sure everyone went home breathing. Theodore loved his work the way certain people love things that are difficult and dangerous and completely alive. He talked about the physics of a fall at the dinner table. He talked about the geometry of a controlled crash, the way fire moved differently across different surfaces, the specific mathematics of making something destructive look real without making it real. He talked about it the way other fathers talked about football scores. Marcus had found it embarrassing sometimes as a kid. Later, he would understand it was the closest his father knew how to get to poetry. In 2009, Marcus was 16 years old. Theodore was working a job outside Palmdale. Not a major studio production, a smaller picture, the kind that got made quickly and aired on cable and was forgotten by the following season. There was a sequence involving a motorcycle and a chain-link fence. It had been walked through 4 times without a problem. On the 5th pass, something failed. Whether it was a brake line or the angle of approach or something that combined both in exactly the wrong way, the investigation afterward could not say with complete certainty. What it could say was that Theodore Del Rey was 41 years old and did not come home. Marcus sat in the second row at the funeral between his mother Gwendolyn and his younger sister Tanya. He held himself together through the service with the concentrated effort of someone carrying something extremely fragile across a long distance. He made it all the way home. He made it through the front door. He made it down the hallway. Then he found his father's yellow legal pad on the kitchen counter. The one Theodore used to sketch out stunt sequences in small, careful diagrams, arrows and measurements, and tiny handwritten notes in the margins. And it was open to a page half filled. A job he would never finish. Marcus sat down on the hallway floor and cried for a long time. Gwendolyn raised him and Tanya alone after that. She worked at a medical billing office in Inglewood, leaving before sunrise most mornings and returning after dark. She was never dramatic about any of it. She simply continued forward, in the particular way of women who have never been offered the option of stopping, and she made sure her children ate and studied and understood that grief was real, but so was Tuesday morning, and so was the rent. Marcus got his diploma, he tried community college, He worked warehouses and call centers and delivery routes before the staffing agency placed him at the building on West Alameda Avenue 3 weeks ago. He did not watch many movies. They reminded him of things he kept in the hallway part of himself, the part you pass through but do not stay in. He had no idea when he told the man in the gray hoodie to hand over his keys, whose son was standing at his desk. And he had no idea that the man he had turned away already knew exactly whose son he was. The morning moved past 10 o'clock. The lobby filled and thinned and filled again. Marcus checked badges and answered the desk phone and signed for a second delivery and did all the small mechanical things that a job requires when a job is the only thing you are allowing yourself to think about. He did not look at the man by the window again. Not directly, but he was aware of him the way you are aware of something in your peripheral vision that will not resolve itself into something ordinary no matter how long you wait. The man just sat, still and easy, like someone who had learned at great cost how to be exactly where he was. It was Cecily Okafor who broke it open. Cecily was 23 years old and worked as a production assistant on the fourth floor. She was the kind of person who noticed everything and processed it at a speed that made other people feel slightly tired. She had come down to the lobby at 9:08 to drop off a courier envelope at the front desk and had stopped when she saw the man sitting by the window. She had stared for exactly 4 seconds. Then she had gone back upstairs in the elevator and typed a text to Priya Nambiar with both thumbs moving fast. There's someone in the lobby who says he's Keanu Reeves. Security stopped him. He's just sitting there by the window drinking coffee. Priya Nambiar read the text once. Then she read it again. She was halfway through reading it a third time when she was already moving toward the elevator. She came through the lobby doors at 9:19. When she saw him sitting by the window in the gray hoodie, she made a sound that was not quite a word and not quite anything else. And she crossed the lobby in long, quick strides and began apologizing before she had covered half the distance between them. Keanu stood up. He was already shaking his head before she finished the first sentence. It's okay, he said. He was doing his job. He said it clearly, without performance, without the strained graciousness of someone who is actually furious and managing it for the room. He said it the way you state a fact about weather or geography, simply and completely and with nothing left over. And then he glanced across the lobby at Marcus. He gave a small nod, the kind that passes between two people who do not know each other yet, but have already established, without words, a certain fundamental respect. Marcus stood behind his desk and received it. He did not know what to do with it, so he did nothing. He stood straight and kept his face professional and felt something shift inside his chest that he could not name and was not ready to examine. Priya was already reaching for her phone with one hand and gesturing toward the elevator with the other, steering Keanu away from the lobby with the energy of someone trying to close a door on a problem before it became a story. Can someone validate my parking? Keanu said, at no one in particular as they reached the elevator. I walked from the garage on Olive. Cecily, who had reappeared from somewhere near the stairs, laughed. Priya laughed. The tension in the lobby dropped several degrees all at once. Marcus did not laugh. He was standing very still at his desk, looking at the elevator doors as they closed, trying to locate the specific feeling that had taken up residence in the center of his chest since the moment the man said he was doing his job and meant every syllable of it. He had been defended by the person he had turned away. He did not know yet what that meant, but he knew, with the particular certainty of someone who has learned to read a room, that something had just begun that was not finished. Not even close. By noon, Marcus knew exactly who he had turned away from the elevator. It was Cecily who told him. Not cruelly, not with the sharp edge of someone enjoying the delivery of bad news, but with the kind of wide-open eyes that meant the information was simply too large to hold inside a single person. She had come back down to the lobby on a coffee run at 11:47 and stopped at his desk and leaned forward slightly and said, very quietly, like she was telling him something that deserved to be handled carefully. You know that was Keanu Reeves, right? Like the Keanu Reeves. John Wick. The Matrix. That guy. Marcus already knew. He had looked it up on his phone the moment Priya took the man upstairs. He had found the Wikipedia page in under 30 seconds. He had sat with the photographs loading on his screen, the press events, the film posters, the candid street shots, and matched them, one by one, into the face of the man who had sat quietly by the window finishing a paper cup of coffee after being told to hand over his keys. They matched perfectly. Every single one. He put his phone face down on the desk and did not pick it up again for 2 hours. The lunch break came and went. The lobby moved through its afternoon rhythm. Marcus stood at his desk and performed the job with his body while his mind ran the morning on a loop, the way a film reel used to catch and repeat on the same damaged frame. The gray hoodie, the torn knee of the jeans, the paper cup, the quiet eyes that had not hardened when he was told no. The way the man had not argued, had not performed, had not reached for the social weapon of his own name, had simply looked at Marcus with an expression that held no anger at all. I work here. I kind of own the place. And yet then, without a single word of protest, he had stepped back. Marcus had worked security desks in 3 buildings across 2 years in Los Angeles. He had watched people treat him as furniture, as an obstacle, as a minor inconvenience between them and wherever they believed they deserved to be. He had been talked over and talked past and talked down to so consistently that it had stopped feeling like an event and started feeling like a climate. This man had sat down by the window and looked at the street and waited with the patience of someone who had stopped needing the world to recognize him correctly in order to know who he was. By 2 o'clock, Marcus had made a decision. He took a piece of paper from the notepad beside the desk phone. He picked up a pen. His handwriting was neater than most people expected, small and deliberate, and the kind that took its time. He thought for a moment about what he wanted to say and what he actually meant, and whether those were the same thing. Then he wrote, I was doing my job, but that doesn't mean I'm not sorry for how it felt. My name is Marcus. If you want to talk, I'll be at the desk. He folded it twice. He held it for a moment. Then he called Cecily over and asked, quietly, if she would bring it up to the 4th floor. She looked at the folded paper. She looked at him. Something moved across her face that was close to admiration and not quite there yet. You sure? She said. Yes, Marcus said. She took it upstairs. Marcus stood at his desk and watched the elevator doors close and understood, with a clarity that surprised him, that he had just done the only thing he could live with having done, and whether anything came back down from the 4th floor or not. He straightened his badge. He went back to work. 20 minutes passed. The elevator opened. Cecily stepped out first, and behind her, moving unhurried across the lobby floor toward the front desk, was the man in the gray hoodie. He walked up to Marcus and stopped. He held out his hand across the desk with the ease of someone who had decided something and was now simply acting on it. Keanu, he said, as if they had never met. As if this were the true beginning of the thing, and everything before it had just been the hallway you walked through to get there. Marcus looked at the hand. He looked at the face. He took a slow breath. Then he reached out and shook it. Marcus Del Rey, he said. And the name, his last name, 2 syllables, completely ordinary to him, Hawk spoken 10,000 times in his own life without consequence, landed on Keanu Reeves like a stone dropped into still water. Marcus watched it happen. He saw the shift. Small and fast and almost completely hidden, the way deep things move beneath a surface that has learned to stay calm. But Marcus was trained to watch faces. It was the first requirement of his job. The man had heard his last name, and something in him had gone very, very still. The lobby moved around them. A phone rang at the far end of the desk. Someone pushed through the front glass doors, bringing a brief rush of March air with them. The delivery boxes near the far wall sat where they had been sitting all morning, patient and ignored. All of it continued exactly as it had been continuing. He indifferent and ordinary and completely unaware that something was happening at the front desk that was not ordinary at all. Keanu Reeves held Marcus's hand 1 second longer than a normal handshake. Then he let go. He looked at Marcus the way you look at something you have been carrying in your memory for a long time and are now seeing in 3 dimensions for the first time. Not with sadness exactly, with something more careful than that. Something that had been stored somewhere internal and was now being brought very slowly into the light. Delray, he said. Not a question. A recognition. The word placed down gently, the way you place something fragile on a surface you are not entirely sure will hold it. Yeah, Marcus said. He kept his voice level. His training held. But something in his chest had begun to move. You okay? Keanu took a slow breath through his nose. He put both hands into the front pocket of the gray hoodie. He looked at the floor for just a moment, not long, barely a full second, and then back up at Marcus with eyes that were steady and direct and carrying something Marcus could not yet name. Your father, he said quietly. Theodore Delray. The name hit Marcus in the sternum like a closed fist. He had not heard his father's full name spoken by a stranger in years. Family said it. His mother said it sometimes, carefully, on the anniversaries that mattered. His sister Tanya said it occasionally when she was telling a story that needed him in it. But strangers did not say Theodore Delray. Strangers did not know Theodore Delray existed. Yeah, Marcus said. His voice had dropped without him asking it to. How do you... He worked on Matrix Reloaded, Keanu said. Second unit, 2002. We were in Alameda, out at the old Alameda Naval Air Station, for the highway sequence. The one on the freeway with the twins. He paused. His voice stayed quiet and even. Your father coordinated the motorcycle work on that sequence. He was on set for 6 weeks. Marcus said nothing. He was very still. He was one of the best people I worked with during those films, Keanu said. Not just at the job, as a person. He stopped for a moment, chose his next words with care. He carried a photograph in his shirt pocket. You and your sister. You were wearing a hockey jersey, blue and white. He showed it to me once when we were waiting on a setup. He said your name. Marcus had forgotten about that photograph. His mother had found it after the funeral. Still in the pocket of his father's work shirt, soft at the edges from being folded and unfolded so many times. She had kept it. He had not thought about it in years. Now it was suddenly so present in his mind that he could feel the texture of it. His throat did something complicated that he did not allow to reach his face. He talked about you, Marcus said. The words came out smaller than he intended. He talked about you too, Keanu said. More than once. A long beat of silence passed between them. Clean and full. The kind of silence that is not empty but loaded. The way certain rooms are loaded after something true has been said inside them. After he died, Keanu said, and his voice shifted just slightly on those 3 words, carrying the weight of them without making a show of it. I tried to find out what happened to his family. I asked some people I trusted. I was told your mother was managing, that you and your sister were okay. He paused. I didn't feel I had the right to walk into something that private. Something that wasn't mine. Marcus waited. There was more. He could feel it. But there was a scholarship fund established in 2010, Keanu continued, through the Industry Safety Foundation. It was set up specifically for the children of below-the-line crew members killed in on-set accidents. He held Marcus's gaze. I funded the first year of it. The lobby was extremely quiet. Marcus heard a phone ring somewhere distant and stop. He heard the building's air system moving through the vents overhead. He heard his own breathing. I went to community college, he said slowly, for a year and a half. The tuition was covered. My mother thought it was a state program. We never questioned it because we were just grateful it was there. It was the foundation, Keanu said simply. Marcus looked at the man standing across his desk. He looked at the gray hoodie with the faded elbows. He looked at the quiet eyes that had not changed their expression once since this conversation began, that had held steady through all of it the way deep water holds steady when the surface is disturbed. He thought about his mother at the kitchen table with her reading glasses on, going through the financial aid paperwork with the focused calm of someone who could not afford for it not to work out. The relief on her face when it came through without a fight. He thought about how she had squeezed his shoulder and said, "See, Marcus, sometimes things just work out." He thought about how he had believed her because he needed to. He thought about his father's yellow legal pad on the counter. He thought about a blue and white hockey jersey. "Why didn't you say something?" Marcus said. "This morning, when I told you to—" He stopped. Started again. "You knew. You already knew who I was when you walked in. And you just sat there." Keanu looked at him steadily. "Because you were doing your job," he said. "And your father was one of the finest people I ever stood beside on a set." He paused. The real smile came then. Slow and genuine and completely without performance. "And because I have learned over a long time that the universe occasionally puts the right people in the same room for a reason." He let that sit. "I figured I could wait 11 minutes to find out what the reason was." Neither of them spoke for a while after that. Outside on Alameda Avenue, Los Angeles moved through its afternoon without pausing. Relentless and enormous and completely uninterested in the small and staggering thing that had just happened inside a lobby on the ground floor of an ordinary building. But inside, two people who had each lost something they could never get back stood 6 feet apart across a front desk and understood each other completely. Marcus Del Rey kept his job. Priya Nambiar, who had come very close to making a different decision at 10:47 that Tuesday morning, sent him a handwritten card 3 days later. It arrived on his desk in a small cream envelope with his name on the front in careful cursive. Inside it said, "The right call at the wrong moment is still the right call." He kept it in his desk drawer beneath the notepad, and on the harder days he took it out and read it once and put it back. Keanu Reeves returned to the building 14 more times over the following year. He always stopped at the front desk, sometimes briefly, a nod, a few exchanged words, the particular kind of check-in that communicates "I remember you" without needing to announce itself. Once on a gray Wednesday morning in November, he arrived with 2 paper cups of coffee from the place on Olive Avenue. He set one on Marcus's desk without explanation and went upstairs. Marcus held the cup for a moment before drinking from it. In the spring of 2020, when productions across Los Angeles shut down and Marcus lost hours at the building, a letter arrived for him through the Industry Safety Foundation. Inside was a single handwritten note with no letterhead, no return address, no formal introduction of any kind. It said, "There is a paid consulting position available at Arch Motorcycle, coordinating safety protocols for the fabrication floor. If you're interested, call Guard." Beneath that, a phone number. Marcus sat in his apartment in Inglewood, the same neighborhood where his mother still lived, 12 minutes away, and looked at the note for a long time. He thought about his father sketching stunt sequences on a yellow legal pad at the kitchen table. He thought about the physics of a fall, the geometry of impact, the mathematics of making something dangerous into something survivable. Yet he thought about a man in a gray hoodie who had been told to hand over his keys and had simply stepped back and waited, because he already knew something Marcus was only just beginning to understand, that the people who see you most clearly are sometimes the ones you almost turned away at the door. Marcus picked up his phone. He called Guard Hollinger. He got the job. And years later, when people asked how he had ended up building a career around the one thing his father had loved most in the world, Marcus Del Rey would tell them about a Tuesday morning in March 2019. About a man in worn gray jeans and a faded hoodie carrying a single paper cup of coffee. About 11 minutes of waiting beside a window on Alameda Avenue. About a folded note and an outstretched hand and a last name that changed everything. And he would tell it the way his father used to talk about the work, plainly and with complete love, and without asking anyone to feel a particular way about it. He would simply tell the truth, and let it land wherever it needed to land. Before you go, drop a comment below and tell us where you are watching from right now. It could be your bedroom, your kitchen, your commute, or the other side of the world. We read every single one, and there is something beautiful about knowing how many different places a single story can reach. If this story moved you even a little, if it reminded you that kindness is real and that the people who see us most clearly are sometimes the ones we least expect, go ahead and hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it tells us to keep finding stories worth telling. And if you believe the world could use a little more of what Keanu Reeves showed in that lobby, that quiet, steady, no audience needed kind of goodness, then subscribe to this channel and become part of a community that is here for exactly that. Every story we tell is chosen for one reason, because it reminds us what people are actually capable of when nobody is watching. Spread this one. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. You never know whose Tuesday morning it might change. And right now, on your screen, there is another story waiting for you. One we think you are going to love just as much as this one. Go ahead and click it. We will see you there.